Dawn was breaking cold and foggy in Cold Springs, one of the chilliest towns in Montana. Frost covered the ground like a translucent veil, drawing white arabesques across the mountain grass. It was the kind of morning that demanded a scarf, gloves, and persistence. Emily Parker, a 24-year-old woman, pulled her beanie down over her forehead as she walked determinedly toward the large wooden barn. "Good grief, it feels like winter is here to stay," she commented to herself, rubbing her gloved hands together. The livestock auction was a traditional event in the region, but for Emily, it represented merely a mandatory assignment for the second-to-last semester of her veterinary degree. Raised in the city, she had always had an affinity for small animals, not beef cattle. This rural environment was completely foreign to her career plan. Upon entering the barn, she was greeted by an atmosphere heavy with gruff voices, muddy boots, and the smell of strong coffee mingled with animal scents. Men in hats conversed in low voices about weights, origins, and bloodlines of prize animals. "First time at an auction, miss?" asked an elderly man with Native American features and graying hair. "Is it that obvious?" she replied, trying to smile. Hands. Without calluses and that lost look. "Outsiders always have that way about them," he explained kindly. "I'm Thomas Nelson. Been a rancher for more than 30 years. Emily Parker. I'm just here for a college assignment." Thomas smiled and offered to show her some quality animals. She accepted out of politeness, jotting information in her notebook while the man spoke with evident passion about each breed. Emily recorded data, calculating how much longer she needed to stay there. At the back of the barn, she noticed an unusual commotion. A group of men had gathered around a smaller pen, laughing mockingly. Her curiosity was stronger than her discomfort, and she approached discreetly. "Better not waste your time with that lot, miss," Thomas warned, having followed her. "They say the animal is problematic." In the makeshift pen stood a black buffalo of impressive size. Unlike the other animals, it remained completely motionless, just breathing slowly. Its coat was dull with visible scars along its back. But what really caught Emily's attention were its deep, dark eyes, which seemed to stare directly into the soul of anyone who observed it. "What's this buffalo story?" she asked, unable to look away. "Nobody knows for sure. Showed up on an abandoned ranch in the mountains. The current owner just wants to get rid of it. They say it doesn't eat properly, never lies down, and stares at people in a strange way." The auctioneer announced the lot with evident disinterest. Lot 47, male. Buffalo approximately 8 years old, no pedigree. Starting bid, symbolic value. An uncomfortable silence took over the space. Nobody raised their hand. Emily felt the animal's gaze fixed on her, as if trying to communicate something beyond human comprehension. It was an inexplicable impulse, something that completely defied her rational nature. $200, she declared, raising her hand. The entire barn seemed to stop. There were muffled laughs and looks of confusion. The auctioneer, surprised, quickly brought down his gavel as if fearing she might change her mind. "Sold to the young lady in the red jacket." Thomas approached, perplexed. "Do you have any experience with buffalo?" "None," she admitted, not fully understanding what she had just done. "But I have a small farm inherited from my grandparents. There's space." "If you need help transporting him, I can help," offered Thomas, with an expression that mixed concern and curiosity. "By the way, what will you call him?" Emily looked at the animal again, which remained motionless, watching her. "Boomer," she answered, without thinking much. "I'll call him Boomer." While she arranged the documentation, she didn't notice a man in a discreet suit at the back of the barn, speaking tensely on the phone. "Yes, sir. Sample B17 has just been sold. To a veterinary student. I'll monitor closely. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue." The Parker smallholding was 30 minutes from town, in an isolated area where the mountains began to rise. The wooden house built by Emily's grandfather maintained its original rustic style, with a porch that wrapped around the entire structure. At the back, an old barn and an improvised stable completed the property. "Here we are, Boomer. This is your new home," said Emily, watching the buffalo being led to the stable by the helper Thomas had sent. The animal followed in silence, without resistance maintaining that erect and vigilant posture that so intrigued the young woman. It was as if he were inspecting every detail of the place, memorizing routes, assessing the terrain. You sure you want to stay alone with this beast, ma'am? Asked the helper, visibly uncomfortable. He doesn't seem normal to me, with all due respect. I'll be fine, thank you, she replied, with more confidence than she actually felt. When the man left, Emily arranged fresh hay and water for the animal, remembering the basic instructions she had researched on the way. Boomer, however, completely ignored the food. He only drank a little water without taking his eyes off her. What happened to you? She murmured, approaching cautiously. When, trying to touch his muzzle, she noticed a strange scar on the side of the animal's neck. It didn't seem to be the result of an accident or a fight with other animals. It was a surgical mark, too precise to be casual. That night, Emily could barely sleep. Her mind worked at an accelerated pace, questioning the impulse that had led her to buy an animal she didn't need. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of white laboratories and black eyes observing her through microscopes. The next morning, she found Boomer in exactly the same position. There were no signs that he had lain down or moved during the night. The food remained untouched. You have to eat, stubborn one, she insisted, changing the hay and adding some vegetables. Upon examining the animal more closely in the daylight, she discovered other scars organized sequentially along his spine. As a future veterinarian, she recognized patterns of invasive procedures. Someone had experimented on this animal. Her cell phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Heather Foster, her advisor at college. Emily, I'm watching a video of you on social media. Since when do you have a buffalo? A video? What are you talking about, Professor? Someone filmed you at the auction yesterday. The video is circulating with some really strange comments. People are fascinated by the animal. Emily hung up and immediately searched for the video. She found it easily. It already had thousands of views. The images showed her signing the purchase papers, while Boomer appeared in the background motionless with that penetrating gaze. The comments ranged from the superstitious to the pseudo-scientific. There's something wrong with that animal. He never blinks. They say it was created in a secret laboratory. No one has ever seen him lying down. He stands 24 hours a day. The video had been posted by an anonymous profile created recently. That caused an involuntary shiver in Emily, who would have an interest in specifically filming that moment. Her reflection was interrupted by a metallic sound coming from the stable. When she got there, she found a small toolbox knocked over on the floor. Boomer was in the same position, but something had changed in his gaze. He seemed more alert. Did you knock this over? She asked, knowing she wouldn't get an answer. As she collected the tools, she noticed something that made her heart race, boot prints that weren't hers. Someone had been there. She searched the property, checking every corner, but found no intruder. Upon returning to the house, a folded paper under the door caught her attention. You don't understand what you have in your hands. The words, typed in a sans serif font, caused immediate discomfort. Emily locked all the doors and closed the curtains. She sat at the kitchen table, analyzing the message. The paper was common, without distinctive marks. When it got dark, headlight beams slowly passed along the road that bordered the farm. They paused briefly in front of the gate, and then continued on. Emily held her breath until they disappeared. Her cell phone vibrated with a notification. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk about B17, don't trust anyone. Tomorrow 10 a.m., Betty's Diner. Emily looked out the window at the stable where Boomer was. B17. This wasn't just a rejected animal. It was something much bigger, and she had just gotten involved in something she didn't completely understand. She returned to the stable with a flashlight, determined to better understand what was happening. As she illuminated Boomer's neck, she noticed that the region of the scar was abnormally warm, contrasting with the cold environment of the mountain night. What did they do to you? She whispered, feeling a mixture of fear and compassion. Betty's Diner was a traditional establishment in downtown Cold Springs, known for its homemade treats and the welcoming atmosphere that attracted both locals and tourists. Emily arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled time, choosing a corner table that allowed her to observe the entrance and windows. "One hot chocolate, please," she ordered from the waitress, while nervously checking each person who entered. At a house. 10:05, a man of about 60 with grey hair and thin-framed glasses entered the diner. He looked discreetly around until he located Emily. He approached with measured steps. "Miss Parker?" he asked in a low voice. "I'm Dr. Richard Miller. I worked with your grandfather." The man sat down without waiting for an invitation. His face displayed deep lines of expression, especially between his eyebrows, as if he had lived years of constant worry. "You don't know me, but I know all about you." Joseph spoke often of his prodigy granddaughter in veterinary medicine, he continued, ordering just black coffee. "We don't have much time. There are people watching." "What is all this about? Who is B-17? questioned Emily, keeping her voice. Dr. Miller looked around before answering. "B-17 isn't a who, it's a what. It's a classification. Your buffalo is a rare specimen, part of a military project officially terminated 15 years ago, but which never really ended." The information fell like a bomb on Emily. Her grandfather, a simple farmer who grew apples and raised some cattle, involved with military projects? "My grandfather was a cattle rancher. What kind of story is this?" Joseph Parker was much more than that. He was a brilliant geneticist who abandoned his academic career to live in the mountains. "But he never completely abandoned science," explained Miller. "The Watcher project used large animals for monitoring and surveillance experiments. Buffalo were chosen for their physical resilience and adaptive capacity." "Are you telling me that Boomer is some kind of experiment?" "Not just any experiment. He's unique, the only one that resisted complete programming. Subcutaneous implants connected to the nervous system, substances that alter neurological patterns. The ability to remain alert for prolonged periods was just the beginning." Emily felt a chill down her spine. She remembered the animal's fixed eyes, the warm scar on his neck, the ever-vigilant posture. "Why did my grandfather never mention this?" "Because he sabotaged the project, Emily. Joseph discovered that the experiments were being directed not just for surveillance, but for mind control in humans. He stole the most valuable specimen, B-17, and hid crucial documents." A waiter passed too close to the table, causing Miller to interrupt the conversation. When he moved away, the man continued. "I was Joseph's assistant on the project. When he decided to sabotage everything, I helped him cover his tracks. I thought we were safe until I saw the video of the buffalo. They never stopped looking." Who are they? An unofficial division that operates on the fringes of government. Now they know B-17 is alive and with you. They'll want to recover him at any cost and eliminate any evidence of the project. Miller discreetly slid a flash drive across the table. "This device contains what I managed to rescue from the original files. Specific instructions for B-17, activation codes, documentation. Your grandfather hid more information. Look where he kept his greatest treasures." "This is madness. How can I believe—" "3 quick claps," interrupted Miller. "Try it when you're with the buffalo. 3 quick claps and you'll see." Before Emily could question further, the man abruptly stood up. "They're here. Don't follow me. Don't trust anyone in town. Your grandfather left a trail of breadcrumbs for you to follow. Find it." Miller left quickly, leaving the coffee cup almost untouched. Through the window, Emily saw a black car parked across the street. A man in a suit was talking on the phone while watching the diner. Back at the farm, Emily went straight to the stable. Boomer remained in his usual position, like a sentinel on perpetual guard. With her heart racing, she positioned herself a few meters from him. 3 quick claps. The effect was instantaneous and disturbing. The buffalo lowered his head at a precise angle, his front legs adjusted into a symmetrical position, and his entire body seemed to enter a state of maximum alert. It wasn't natural animal behavior. It was mechanical, programmed. "My God," she whispered, taking a step back. Emily ran to the house and opened the flash drive on her laptop. Technical documents, neural implant diagrams, chemical formulas, behavioral reports. It was real, all real. Among the files, she found mentions of the trusted depository, clearly her grandfather, and recommendations for destroying physical evidence in case of compromise. At the end of one of the documents, a handwritten note said, "The telescope guards more than stars." The telescope. Her grandfather always took her to observe the stars when she was a child. The old instrument was still in the attic, stored in a carved wooden box. Upon opening the optical compartment, she found another flash drive, carefully protected, and a small leather-bound notebook. Joseph Parker's diary. In the first pages, she read, "Some call what I did betrayal. I call it humanity. When science loses compassion, it needs to be stopped. B-17 is living proof of how far we went and the mistake we made." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The night advanced as Emily devoured each page of her grandfather's diary, rediscovering a man she had never really known. Joseph Parker wasn't just the loving grandfather who had taught her constellations and love for animals. He was a scientist who carried the weight of impossible moral choices. Compound A17 permanently alters synaptic connections, she read on one of the pages. Subjects gradually lose their behavioral autonomy, replaced by programmed response patterns. B-17 demonstrated unique resistance, maintaining independent cognition even after multiple exposures. The notes became increasingly disturbing. Joseph described how the project had begun with border surveillance using modified animals, but had evolved into something much darker, preliminary tests on humans. The landline phone rang, startling her. Almost nobody used that line. "Hello," she answered hesitantly. "Emily, it's Heather Foster, your professor. I need to speak with you urgently." "Professor, what happened?" "I received a visit from men claiming to be from the FBI. They asked questions about you, about your research. They mentioned a buffalo. Emily, they're not from the FBI. I noticed from their fake badges." Emily's stomach sank. "Did you tell them anything?" "Nothing relevant. I said you were just a dedicated student. But I have reason to believe they're monitoring your cell phone. Don't use it." Heather paused. "The samples you brought me yesterday. I found something unusual." "What kind of thing?" "A neurochemical compound I've never seen before. It has properties that defy what we know about animal neuroscience." "Emily, what are you mixed up in?" Before she could answer, Emily heard a noise coming from the stable. Through the window, she saw flashlight beams moving around the property. "I need to hang up, Professor. There are people here." "Emily, wait." She hung up and turned off all the lights. The intruders were close. She grabbed the diary, the flash drives, and stuffed everything into a backpack. Through the kitchen window, she distinguished at least 3 silhouettes moving toward the stable. She needed to reach Boomer before they did. She went out the back door and circled the house, staying in the shadows. Adrenaline pulsed in her veins as she approached the stable from behind. "Perimeter clear. The girl must be sleeping," she heard one of the men say. "Prepare the sedative for the animal. Transport arrives in 15 minutes. Emily managed to enter the stable through an opening at the back. Boomer was still in his habitual position, but his eyes showed unusual agitation. It was as if he sensed the danger. Guided by an instinct she didn't even understand herself, Emily approached and whispered near the animal's ear, "We need to get out of here." To her surprise, Boomer moved his head slightly, as if nodding. She clapped 3 times, and again the animal entered that programmed alert state. Following an impulse, she murmured, "Protect." The buffalo immediately positioned himself at her side like a guard. The notes were right. He responded to specific vocal commands after the sequence of claps. When the men entered through the main door of the stable, they found it empty. Emily and Boomer had already escaped through the back, heading toward the forest that bordered the property. "Where are we going?" Emily asked herself, feeling the weight of the situation. The last pages of the diary mentioned coordinates and an old farm in the mountains. Fair place where Joseph had kept the last pieces of the puzzle. It was her only option. Navigating the forest at night would be impossible for any ordinary person, but Boomer seemed to have enhanced senses. The animal moved with precision in the dark, guiding her along safe paths. as if he could map the environment even in complete darkness. After an hour of walking, they reached a secondary road. Emily knew she needed help, and there was only one person she could trust at that moment. Luke Anderson had been her friend since childhood. With a degree in computer engineering, he worked remotely from Cold Springs for technology companies in the capital. He was always willing to help and, more importantly, understood enough about technology to advise her on how to avoid tracking. Using a public phone at the gas station, she called her friend. "Luke, it's me, Emily. I need help and I can't explain everything now. It's an emergency." "Where are you?" he asked without hesitation. "Mountain View gas station on the old road. I'm with a large animal." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't use your cell phone." Luke arrived in the promised time, driving his pickup truck. His face showed shock when he saw Boomer. "When you said large animal, I imagined a dog, not a buffalo," he exclaimed, nervously looking around. "What's going on, Emily?" "It's a long story, and I promise to tell you everything on the way. We need to go to the mountains, to the old Morgan Ranch. That place has been abandoned for years. Exactly why we need to go there." The pickup. Truck barely accommodated Boomer in the bed, but the animal maintained a surprisingly good balance. As Luke drove, Emily told him everything: the auction, the discoveries about her grandfather, the secret project, the men who were pursuing her. "This is crazy, Emily. It sounds like a movie conspiracy." "I know," she replied, showing him the diary, "but it's real and now we're involved." Luke's pickup truck climbed the winding road that cut through the mountains, facing the dense fog that reduced visibility to just a few yards. The headlights only partially illuminated the path, reflecting off the tiny droplets suspended in the air like thousands of small mirrors. "I've taken all precautions," explained Luke, trying to maintain control on the slippery road. "I turned off the GPS, removed the battery from your phone and mine. If they're using conventional technology, they won't be able to track us." In the truck bed, protected by a tarp, Boomer maintained perfect balance despite the sharp curves. Occasionally, Emily looked back, amazed at the animal's adaptability. "I still can't believe your grandfather was involved in something so intense," commented Luke, breaking the tense silence. "Joseph Parker always seemed so ordinary, so normal," completed Emily. "Apparently he was much more than he let on. Like all of us, perhaps." She leafed through the diary in the week, light of the vehicle's interior, looking for more information about the Morgan Ranch. She found an entry dated 15 years ago. "I've configured the location as we planned. The basement of the main house has been reinforced. If anyone discovers it, it will look just like an Apple storage cellar. Only those who know the mechanism will be able to access what's below." "It says something here about a reinforced basement," she commented. "Seems like there's a hidden entrance." Luke adjusted his hands on the steering wheel, visibly nervous. "Emily, I don't want to be pessimistic, but have you considered that we might be getting into something really dangerous? We're not talking about a common criminal, but people with resources possibly connected to the government." "I know, Luke, but I can't simply ignore this. Not after seeing what Boomer is capable of. Not after reading what my grandfather risked to expose the truth." She paused. "You can drop me off there and leave. I don't want to involve you more than you already are." He shook his head, determined. "Friends don't abandon friends. Besides, I'm curious by nature. Now I want to see this secret bunker with my own eyes." A high beam suddenly appeared in the rearview mirror, intensely illuminating the interior of the pickup. A large vehicle was approaching at high speed. "We've got company," alerted Luke, accelerating, "and they don't look friendly." The vehicle behind them, a black SUV with tinted windows, rapidly approached, almost touching the rear bumper of the pickup. "It's them!" exclaimed Emily. "How did they find us so quickly?" "Maybe it's not conventional tracking technology," suggested Luke, maneuvering to maintain distance. "If your grandfather is right about the project's capabilities, they might have more advanced means." The SUV pulled alongside, trying to force them off the road. Luke struggled to maintain control, but on a sharp curve the vehicle almost skidded. "We can't outrun them like this," he said, breathing heavily. "We need a plan B." Emily looked back where Boomer remained strangely calm despite the situation. An idea emerged. "There's a logging trail on the right after that curve," she shouted. "It's too narrow for the SUV, but we can make it." Luke nodded, and upon reaching the curve turned sharply to the right. The pickup truck shook violently as it entered the unpaved trail, branches scratching the sides of the vehicle. As predicted, the SUV was too wide to follow them. "This will give us a few minutes," said Luke, focused on the steep trail. "But they'll simply go around. They know these mountains better than we do." The trail climbed in a zigzag up the slope, becoming increasingly precarious. At a certain point, it became so narrow that branches and bushes scraped against both sides of the vehicle. "I don't know if we can continue," Luke muttered, reducing speed. The truck wasn't made for this. Suddenly, Boomer began to stir in the truck bed. It was the first time he had shown any restlessness. "He's sensing something," observed Emily, looking back. "I need to check." "We don't have time to stop," protested Luke. "Trust me." Reluctantly, Luke stopped the vehicle. Emily got out and approached Boomer, who was staring fixedly at the dense vegetation to the left of the trail. She followed the animal's gaze and noticed an almost invisible opening between the trees. "There's a passage there," she exclaimed, "a smaller trail, completely camouflaged." Luke got out to check. There was indeed a narrow trail, clearly made, for passage on foot, winding up the mountain through the dense vegetation. "We can't continue with the truck," he concluded. "But we can continue on foot," argued Emily. "Boomer can navigate through there." The diary mentions that the Morgan Ranch is at the top of the mountain. They heard the rumble of engines in the distance. The pursuers were circling the mountain. "We have no choice," decided Luke, grabbing a backpack with basic supplies. "We'll have to abandon the vehicle." Emily approached Boomer and clapped 3 times quickly. The buffalo reacted immediately, positioning himself beside her. "Let's go this way," she said, pointing to the hidden trail. To Luke's surprise, the animal obediently followed, taking the lead on the steep climb. He moved with impressive certainty, as if he knew the way, always choosing the most stable passages on the practically invisible trail. "It's like he's guiding us," whispered Luke, amazed. "Maybe he is," replied Emily, following the buffalo closely. "My grandfather wrote about enhanced geographical memory in the specimens of the project." The night advanced and the temperature dropped rapidly. The fog became denser as they climbed. The silence of the mountain was interrupted only by the sound of their footsteps and labored breathing. In the distance, flashlight beams moved in. The darkness. Their pursuers had found the abandoned pickup and were now searching the area. "We need to keep going," whispered Emily. "We can't stop." Dawn was painting the sky with orange hues when Emily, Luke, and Boomer finally spotted the ruins of the old Morgan Ranch. The abandoned property seemed frozen in time. A 2-story main house with peeling paint, a partially collapsed barn, and some smaller structures scattered across the extensive grounds. Vegetation had reclaimed much of the area, growing wild among the structures. "We made it," whispered Emily, exhausted from the nighttime hike. "This must be the place." Luke rested his hands on his knees, catching his breath. "It looks like it's been abandoned for decades. Are you sure this is the right place?" Boomer, who had led the way throughout the journey, headed directly to the main house without hesitation. He stopped in front of the entrance door, which was partially off its hinges, and looked at Emily, as if waiting for an order. "He knows where we are," she commented, following the animal. The interior of the house was in surprisingly better condition than the exterior. Although covered in dust and cobwebs, the structure seemed solid. Old furniture remained in place, as if the residents had simply disappeared one day. "Strange," observed Luke, examining a bookshelf with books still on the shelves. "Seems like someone kept this place standing, even abandoned." Emily consulted the diary. "My grandfather wrote about a basement that served as an apple cellar. There must be an entrance somewhere." Boomer moved deliberately through the house, stopping in the kitchen. With his muzzle, he pushed aside a dusty rug, revealing an almost imperceptible trap door in the floor. "How did he know?" asked Luke, dumbfounded. "Programming," replied Emily, approaching. "Somehow, he recognizes this place." The trap door was locked with an old padlock. Luke used an iron bar found in the corner of the kitchen to break it open. Upon opening the wooden door, a staircase was revealed that descended into darkness. "I'll go first," offered Luke, turning on the flashlight from the emergency kit he had brought. The staircase led to a spacious basement with wooden shelves. Along the walls, still containing some old boxes for fruit storage, it was exactly what it appeared to be, an apple cellar. "I don't understand," grumbled Luke, disappointed. "It's just a normal basement." Emily observed Boomer, who completely ignored the shelves and headed to an apparently solid wall at the back of the room. The animal touched a specific point with his muzzle insistently. "He's trying to show us something," she said, approaching. "There must be a mechanism here." Carefully examining the wall, she noticed an almost imperceptible imperfection in the wood. She pressed the spot and heard a click. An entire section of the wall slid to the side, revealing a narrow corridor, illuminated by emergency lights that still worked, powered by some type of independent generator. "Unbelievable," whispered Luke. "A secret bunker, just like in the movies." The corridor led to a spacious room, clearly designed as a laboratory and documentation center. Old computers, medical equipment, and shelves filled with organized folders occupied the space. Everything was surprisingly well preserved, protected from humidity and time. "My grandfather kept all this running for years," murmured Emily, amazed. "He must have visited regularly without anyone knowing." Luke turned on one of the computers, which surprisingly initialized with a hum. "Operating system from the 2000s. My God, it's a technological time capsule." Emily opened one of the folders and found detailed documents about the Watcher project, technical reports, photographs of experiments, results of neurological tests on animals. The images showed sophisticated laboratories where buffalo and other large animals received implants in meticulous surgical procedures. "Here it is," she said, finding a folder labeled B17. "It's the complete file on Boomer." The animal remained at the entrance to the laboratory, observing them with that penetrating gaze that now made even more sense. Emily opened the folder and found a detailed report. "Specimen B17. Anomalous neurological resistance." "It's fascinating," she murmured as she read. Boomer was the only one among dozens of animals that demonstrated partial resistance to complete programming. He maintained aspects of his original personality, despite the implants and chemical compounds. He was considered simultaneously a failure and an advancement in the project. Luke had found a locked cabinet and was working to open it. "It seems your grandfather knew that someday someone would come looking for this information. Everything is perfectly organized, like an archive ready to be discovered and exposed." Emily continued exploring the documents, increasingly horrified by the scope of the project. The final phases involved preliminary tests on humans using modified versions of Compound A17, the same found in Boomer's system. "This goes far beyond animal surveillance," she said, her voice trembling. "They were developing methods of neurochemical control applicable to people, an advanced type of mind control disguised as a national security project." Luke finally managed to open the cabinet and found vials carefully stored in a small refrigerator that was still functioning. "Emily, come see this." The vials contained samples of Compound A17 in different concentrations, preserved for future analysis. Along with them, there was a modern flash drive with a handwritten label. "For Emily, when you're ready." "How did he know?" she asked, holding the device with trembling hands. "Your grandfather must have imagined that you, with your veterinary background, would eventually notice something strange if you found Boomer. Maybe he even arranged for the animal to reach you." Emily connected the flash drive to a newer laptop they found in the laboratory. It contained a single video file. Upon opening it, the face of Joseph Parker appeared on the screen. "Hello, my dear," said the image of her grandfather, visibly older than in her memories. "If you're seeing this, it means you found B17 and followed the path here. You've always been intelligent and determined, since you were little. I knew that if anyone could complete what I started, it would be you." Joseph Parker's face filled. The laptop screen, his tired but determined eyes fixed on the camera. Emily recognized the setting. It was the same bunker where they were now, some years earlier. The recording continued. I don't have much time to explain everything, so I'll get straight to the point. What you found is just a small part of something much larger. The Watcher project began as a legitimate research initiative in advanced biotechnology for border surveillance. I was one of the lead scientists, proud of what we considered an advancement for national security. Joseph took a sip of water before continuing. Everything changed when we discovered that compound A17 could permanently alter synaptic connections in mammals, allowing the implantation of pre-programmed commands. A group within the project began to develop unauthorized applications, eventually aiming for use in humans. It was the beginning of a behavioral control technology that could transform people into remotely controlled automatons. Emily and Luke exchanged looks of astonishment. In the corner of the laboratory, Boomer remained motionless, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. B-17, or Boomer, as you probably call him, is unique. He was the only specimen that demonstrated natural resistance to total conditioning. Something in his brain structure resisted complete submission. When I realized what some colleagues planned to do with this technology, I decided to sabotage the project. I stole B-17, samples of the compound, and all the documentation I could gather. Joseph's face hardened with the memory. I was declared a traitor. I had to disappear, take refuge in the anonymity of a simple life in the mountains. They never stopped looking, but I had an advantage. I knew their methods, their technological limitations. I kept B-17 hidden until it was safe to reintroduce him to the world in a way that would eventually lead him to you. Emily felt tears running down her face. Her grandfather had orchestrated everything, preparing the path for her to follow years after his departure. The real danger isn't just the Watcher project, but who finances and directs it behind the scenes. A group that calls itself the Consortium, formed by powerful people from various sectors. They see neural control technology as the future of global power. They've already conducted tests on humans, discreetly, in various parts of the world. Luke ran his hand through his hair, clearly disturbed. Emily, you're in great danger. The fact that you've acquired B-17 must have already triggered containment protocols. They'll come after you, as they came after me. But you have something I didn't have, all the evidence necessary to expose the project to the world. Joseph showed a device similar to a flash drive, but with a peculiar design. This device contains all the project files, including human tests, names of those involved, the consortium's structure, everything. It's hidden where I always kept my greatest treasures, in the secret compartment of the telescope we used to observe the stars. Remember how to open it? Emily nodded instinctively at the screen, remembering the starry nights with her grandfather when he showed her how to hide small treasures in the hidden compartment of the telescope. There's one more thing you need to know about B-17. He isn't just a command receiver. His modified neural structure allows him to store and transmit data. The implants in his body are more than control devices. They're a living information storage system. That's why he's so valuable to them. The revelation hit Emily like lightning. That's why the area of Boomer's neck was always warm. The implants were constantly active. There's an extraction protocol, 3 claps, followed by a specific vocal command, reveal core. This activates a sequence that allows access to the stored data. Be careful, Emily. This information can change the world, but in the wrong hands it can become a weapon. Her grandfather looked beyond the camera, as if checking if he was alone, before concluding, I trust you to do what's right. You've always had a just heart and a brilliant mind. I'm sorry to involve you in this, but I saw no other way out. Richard Miller is trustworthy. He helped me prepare everything. Seek him out if you need additional support. I love you, my girl. Do what you need to keep B-17 safe and expose the truth. The recording ended, leaving Emily and Luke in absolute silence for a few moments. Your grandfather was a hero, Emily, Luke finally said. He risked everything to stop something terrible. She wiped away her tears and approached Boomer, who watched her with those deep, intelligent eyes. It wasn't just intuition or coincidence that led me to buy him at that auction, she realized. Somehow my grandfather programmed all of this. Boomer was conditioned to recognize me. Luke examined the laboratory, now with a more attentive look. This explains why the animal ended up at that specific auction, where you would be. Why he reacted specifically to you. Your grandfather must have used your biometric data, maybe photographs of you, as part of the programming. Emily positioned herself in front of Boomer, took a deep breath and clapped 3 times quickly. "Reveal core," she pronounced with a clear voice. The effect was immediate and impressive. Boomer closed his eyes and assumed a completely rigid posture. The area of his neck, where Emily had noticed the warm scar, began to emit a subtle glow under the skin. A small compartment, almost imperceptible in the animal's skin, slowly opened, revealing a miniaturized technological interface. "My God," whispered Luke, approaching cautiously. "It's like a biological drive. They literally transformed part of his body into data storage." Emily felt a mix of fascination and horror. The technology was revolutionary, but the ethical price was unacceptable. "How do we access the data?" she asked. Luke examined the interface. "It seems compatible with the computers here. There must be some specific cable." He opened more drawers and found a unique connection device, clearly designed for that specific interface. "Here it is. Your grandfather thought of everything." They connected the device between Boomer and the computer. Immediately, a window opened on the screen, displaying organized folders of files, names, dates, locations, photographs, detailed reports. It was a complete library on the Watcher project and its true intentions. "We have everything," murmured Emily, scrolling through the files. "Absolutely everything to expose the consortium." A distant noise coming from the surface interrupted their investigation. Footsteps and voices were approaching the house. "They found us," warned Luke, looking toward the bunker entrance. "We need to get out of here now." The footsteps became more audible on the upper floor of the abandoned house. Emily and Luke exchanged tense looks while working quickly to copy the files from Boomer's neural system. The flash drive that Joseph had left specifically for his granddaughter had an impressive capacity, enough to store the entire library of evidence. "How much longer?" whispered Emily, nervously looking at the bunker entrance. 60%. 70, replied Luke, watching the progress bar. "I never thought I'd say this, but we need a data transfer from a buffalo to a computer to be faster." The sound of furniture being overturned echoed above them. The intruders were methodically searching the house, approaching the kitchen where the trapdoor was located. "We need an alternative escape route," murmured Emily, frantically examining the laboratory. "My grandfather wouldn't have built this without an emergency exit." Luke nodded, still monitoring the transfer. "Look for irregularities in the walls, air currents, different sounds when you tap." Emily began inspecting the perimeter of the bunker, while Boomer remained motionless, connected to the computer in his core-revealed state. As she felt along the back wall, she sensed a slight air current coming from an almost invisible crack. "Here!" she exclaimed in a low voice. Pushing on the wall section, she discovered that a panel slid silently, revealing a narrow tunnel illuminated by low-intensity emergency lights. 95%, informed Luke. "Almost there." A crash on the upper floor indicated that the intruders had found the trapdoor. Authoritative voices gave rapid orders. They had only seconds. 100%. Luke disconnected the device and stored the flash drive. "How do we turn off Boomer from this mode?" Emily thought quickly. "Boomer, normalize," she ordered, following her intuition. The buffalo blinked. The interface in his neck closed imperceptibly, and he returned to his normal posture, looking at them as if asking what the next step would be. "Let's go," whispered Emily, guiding them to the newly discovered tunnel. Luke closed the panel behind them at the exact moment they heard the laboratory door being violently opened. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to advance in single file. To both their surprise, Boomer was able to navigate the space perfectly, adapting his posture to fit through the narrow passage. "Where does this lead?" asked Luke, keeping his voice low. "I don't know, but I trust my grandfather," replied Emily. "He's thought of everything so far." The tunnel followed a slight downward slope for approximately 200 yards before making a sharp turn upward. It ended at a metal ladder leading to another trapdoor. Emily climbed first, carefully pushing it open. She emerged in a small hunter's cabin, covered by dense vegetation, practically invisible in the landscape. They were at least half a mile from the main ranch, in a position that offered a privileged view of the property. "Perfect," she murmured, helping Luke climb up and then guiding Boomer, who surprisingly managed to use the ladder with remarkable agility for an animal of his size. "We made it," sighed Luke, checking the flash drive to confirm the data was intact. "What now?" "Now we need to reach civilization and expose everything," replied Emily, observing through the dusty window of the cabin. "We can see men in black searching the ranch, clearly frustrated at having lost our trail." Emily consulted the map of regional trails she had downloaded to her cell phone before the journey. "There's a secondary road 2 miles from here, down the eastern slope. If we can reach it without being seen, maybe we can hitchhike or find help." "And then?" questioned Luke. "Even with all this evidence, who would believe us? We're talking about a secret project involving mind control and a buffalo with technological implants. It sounds like a B-movie conspiracy." Emily thought for a moment, analyzing their options. "Heather Foster," she finally concluded. "My pathology, professor. She's already analyzed samples from Boomer and noticed anomalies. She's internationally respected and has connections with science journalists. If anyone can help us publicize this credibly, it's her." They waited until activity at the main ranch diminished. The sun was already beginning to set when they finally left the cabin, moving silently through the dense forest, with Boomer faithfully following them. "It's impressive how he behaves more like a trained dog than a buffalo," commented Luke, as they descended the slope. "It's the result of the implants and conditioning," explained Emily. "But there's something more. An intelligence of his own, a conscious choice to follow us. I think my grandfather was right about him being special." After an hour of careful walking, they reached the secondary road. To their luck, a fruit truck heading to Cold Spring stopped when they waved. The driver, a kindly-looking older man, widened his eyes when he saw Boomer. "Do I really need to ask what crazy story this is?" he questioned, scratching his grey head. "It's a long story, Mr. Anthony," replied Emily, recognizing an old friend of her grandfather. "We're in trouble and need to get to town as quickly as possible." The man looked at the three, 2 exhausted young people and a buffalo with an intense gaze, and shrugged. "Joseph always said you were special, girl. If you're in trouble, I won't ask questions. Climb in the back." 3 days later, the scientific world was thrown into an uproar when the renowned pathologist, Dr. Heather Foster, convened an international press conference. At her side were Emily, Luke, and, impressively, Boomer, who remained calm despite the cameras and crowd. "What we present today is not just a denunciation, but evidence of a biotechnological revolution that was developed in secret and with ethically questionable purposes," declared Heather, as she presented the data, samples, and documents rescued from the bunker. In the audience, world-renowned science journalists, representatives of human rights organizations, and government authorities watched in astonishment at the demonstration of Boomer's capabilities and the evidence of the Watcher project. Among the public, discreetly positioned at the back of the auditorium, was Dr. Richard Miller, observing with satisfaction as the truth that he and Joseph had fought to protect finally came to light. A journalist raised her hand. "What will happen to the buffalo now?" Emily stepped up to the microphone. "Boomer is not just proof or an experiment, he's a victim. All the knowledge we've obtained will be used to develop methods to neutralize the implants without harming him. He will live the rest of his days in a special sanctuary where he can be studied ethically, helping us understand and reverse similar technologies that may have been used elsewhere." As she spoke, Emily maintained eye contact with Boomer, whose proud posture and intelligent gaze captured everyone's attention. For a moment, she felt that the animal perfectly understood what was happening, that their journey together had culminated exactly where her grandfather had expected, in the revelation of a truth that needed to be known. The subsequent investigations led to the dissolution of the consortium, the arrest of various scientists and high-ranking officials involved, and a complete reformulation of biotechnological research laws at a global level. At the small farm in the Cold Springs Mountains, now transformed into a center for ethical research in neuroscience, Emily frequently observed Boomer grazing freely in the field, finally acting like the animal he was, lying in the sun, something he had never done before. The implants had been neutralized, allowing him to recover natural behaviors, although he maintained that unique, deep, and conscious gaze. On a particular afternoon, as the sun set over the mountains, she found an envelope hidden in a box of her grandfather's mementos. Inside, an old photograph showed Joseph Parker next to a small newborn buffalo. On the back there was just one handwritten phrase: "Sometimes our greatest discovery is learning when to stop. Our greatest contribution is choosing humanity above advancement." Emily smiled, holding the photograph close to her heart. Her grandfather wasn't just a brilliant scientist, but a man who understood that true progress could never come at